We keep rolling on. Joined by, and look, everybody is running around, so I really appreciate them hopping on with little old me with the free time that they have. And we are joined by, honestly, my guy. And let me just say, okay, I didn't know Sean Cunningham that well before Summer League. But
Here's Sean Cunningham. Who?
We got to spend some time in Vegas together. And Sean and I, look, man, Sean, you're my guy. First time on the show since we kicked it in Vegas. How you doing, dude? How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I know life has changed for you a little bit since that faithful trip in Vegas back in July. But yeah, man, don't have to be in Vegas to hang out, bro.
Hey, trust me. Once I break free, I'm back out here. Okay, do not worry, Sean. All right, she just turned a month, so I'm getting closer and closer. We got through the month, so we're good now. All right.
Hey, I get it. I mean, you're all role models for me. You show me what not to do. So I admire you guys. I admire you people who can hold down the fort and family at the same time. So keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you, Sean. This is Sean Cunningham of KCRA. Sean, we've been talking to a ton of people today, and I want to give you kind of a different line of questioning a little bit. Sam Amick put out an article earlier today about the decision to sign Russell Westbrook. Obviously, they've talked about it all season long. But one thing that stuck out to me that Sean Amick said, or that Sam Amick said, was that training camp. Right now, I know media can only see certain parts of training camp, but basically the backup point guard position was glaring during training camp. Do you have any information on that, or when you were able to get in, or anybody that you talked to? Because I'm just curious how bad it got, or is it more of just not an excuse, but clearly they were interested in Russell Westbrook anyway. We've been hearing it all summer long.
Well, I think I haven't read Sam's article yet, but I think for me and at least people I've talked to, I haven't heard necessarily that it was glaring. I know that there's been certainly concerns about backup point guard minutes and what that could look like for this team going forward. I mean, obviously we know that there's kind of an imbalance there. They have a lot of guards. Is there guards that they would ultimately like to sacrifice to add some other needs to this team? For sure. But, wanting something and doing something is completely different. So with the mix of talent that they have, I think what stood out was, regardless of what preseason looks like and what training camp has looked like in terms of those backup point guard minutes, I think the thing that, when it comes to Russell Westbrook having fans within the organization, I think there's fans with him on the roster too. I mean, it's pretty well documented. I mean, you've got guys with experience with him. DeMar DeRozan, obviously, having a ton of experience with him in, being an LA guy. Zach LaVine kind of that way as well, spending so much, time in LA as well. And then, former teammates. I mean, Dennis Schroeder will be a third-time teammate with Russell Westbrook, having played with him on the Thunder and the Lakers, and of course Domas as well, who's played with him in the Thunder when he was, back when he was a rookie before he moved on to Indiana. So there's a lot of familiarity there. I think what's really going to be valued there is somebody who has that veteran, been there, done that presence at the point guard position, as opposed to, someone like Malik Monk, who has to essentially learn the position, and I think has done a fantastic job of doing whatever's asked of him. And Devin Carter, who's also trying to adapt to a role. You've got a guy who just knows how to play the game despite being 37 years old. So, his accolades speak for themselves, and certainly he's not the perfect player, and it may not make a lot of sense in terms of how many guards are on this team currently. But as you know, Alan, the NBA landscape can change very, very quickly, and it might make a little bit more sense should they make a move here in the coming days, weeks, months ahead. It's never a finished product, as we know. So, we can all pick it apart, but you can at least see some of the things that they would like. And I think when you have management, maybe coaching, and as well as some players ringing that bell to bring in a guy who's going to be joining his seventh team in 8 seasons, Clearly, a lot of these teams that add Russell Westbrook aren't these rebuilding type teams. They're teams that are trying to do something in the playoffs and be able to add a piece to add to their success. So from that standpoint, I can see it. My personal feelings is, it may not make a lot of sense right now, but weeks, months down the road, it might make a little bit more sense. But we'll have that part remains to be seen.
Talking to Sean Cunningham. And Sean, you're doing a little bit of alluding here. That's why I love having you on the show. You always give us just enough breadcrumbs here. And my thought process is this, Sean. We talked to Malik Monk during media day, and he was very open, as he always is, very transparent, always a great interview. And he felt as if, and I know you just mentioned the whole thing about the backup PG being a little bit overstated, because he felt like, hey, I'm not a pure point guard, but I can still handle the rock a little bit. Malik Monk wakes up today, and obviously this had been talked about for a bit. Malik Monk wakes up today, and we'll talk about the younger guys too, but he wakes up today, and what are his feelings on them bringing in yet another guard who is, I'm not going to say demand playing time. He's on a minimum deal, but they clearly are very high on him, and the new regime brought him in, whereas Malik Monk was, a part of the team with the old regime. How's Malik feeling this morning?
Well, I haven't talked to him, but I would imagine Malik woke up, looked at his phone, and shrugged. I don't think that anything's catching Malik Monk off guard when it comes to the Kings signing Russell Westbrook. I mean, as we just laid out, this thing's been going on for quite some time, and I think one of the things that Malik has been very open and complimentary about is the fact that Scott Perry has been very transparent in what he expects and sees of Malik, and says he'll be in contact with him in terms of he told him, like, if he wasn't I think he had shared a story about his agent saying, hey, this is back in the off season where if nothing happened on this day, then nothing would happen going forward.
Right.
Excuse me. And so Malik I think, looks at it and still sees a place on the team. I think the one that feels a little bit differently would be guys like Keon Ellis and possibly Devin Carter as potential for what their roles look like going forward. Now, the team did pick up the third-year option on Devin Carter just yesterday, but that's really more of a formality, because whether he's in Sacramento or on another team, you want that flexibility, and you want to make sure that you have that third-year option. I think if you want to keep him away from free agency, whether you're keeping him a part of your team or you're just essentially looking at him as an asset, right? So I don't think today's move makes Malik Monk feel any type of way about his future in Sacramento necessarily. I think they all look at it and say, okay, if I'm Malik, I'm looking at it and say, okay, you don't need me to be a strictly point guard. I can go back to being my playmaking two-guard kind of self. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean for other guys? That remains to be seen. But I think, I don't think that there's going to be if any move is to happen regarding Malik Monk, I don't think he's going to be caught off guard by it. I think the organization will be very upfront and let him know. But I personally don't think that that's going to happen.
Talking to Sean Cunningham of KCRA. Sean, could this actually work? We talked yesterday, and we've been reading different articles, what's the one thing that could ruin each team's season. And I've been trying to talk myself into it. I'm not really high on the Grizzlies and certain teams out there. Is there a world where they could get to the 8 seed? Do you see that? And we can get the XXXL t-shirts and get the playoff revenue. Is there a world where you see them even getting to the 8 seed, or am I on the Looney Tunes stuff?
It's such a loaded question, man. I wouldn't bet on it necessarily, but I think even without even adding Russell Westbrook, I think this team is talented enough to be able to contend for the 8th seed, maybe even the 7th seed, depending on how the West goes. Now, a lot would have to go right there.
Right.
And again, I'm not necessarily betting on it, but I think this team is talented enough to win games. I think they're talented enough to, the thought being, get into a playoff matchup and be able to be disruptive, be able to create problems. You have a ton of talent all over this roster, with the right tinkering in the season, you might, it wouldn't take much to make this team very, very competitive. But I think I think a lot has to go right. First of all, health, and all of a sudden they're behind the eight ball with losing Keegan Murray for the next 4 to 6 weeks, at minimum for the first 10 games of the season. He's probably, maybe next to Domantas Sabonis, the most irreplaceable on the roster in terms of how this roster is built currently. But, as long as you have the fortune of health and you have the ability to score the basketball, you kind of, I think a lot can go right for this team. But again, doing it and betting on it is completely different. I still think that it wouldn't be my choice. I wouldn't bet on it necessarily, but I don't think this team is going to be abysmal either. I think it's going to, if I'm a betting man, which I'm not, I would think anywhere from 38 to 42 wins. That can mean a whole 5 different positions in the West, from maybe as high as 7 to down to low as 10 or 11. So that all remains to be seen. But certainly, I feel like this team is talented enough to be able to do it. Can it all come together? Sure, it can. Could it all fall apart? Absolutely. But I think, again, if they are talented enough to be and competitive enough to be able to put together a team that can hover around what you're talking about, that 8th seed, 10th, 9, 10, 11, whatever that ends up being, I think they're talented enough to do that.
Sean Cunningham covers the Kings and sports for KCRA. Sean, before we get you out of here, just because you brought up those amount of games, right, that stretch between, 36 and 40, whatever the case may be, let's say they do end up as you've said, and as they've been before, that 9-10, right? Maybe not 7-8, but 9-10. Based on your vibe and just how you understand the team, I know you were on, last week or maybe a couple weeks ago, you talked about possibly blowing this thing up. Do you think that there is a timer on this team? And I guess if they were 9-10 and they're up against the trade deadline, what do you think they would do? Do you think that they would try to power through and say, no, all we got to do is get hot and we can catch the 8th seed? Or would they say, hey, we're 9-10, we've been here before, there's some guys that have a little bit more value with some other teams that are trying to make a push, let's just say uncle and move forward?
Yeah, I mean, the feel I get, and again, it's a question that's probably obviously better asked for Scott Perry and Vivek Ranadive for sure, but the feeling that I get in conversations that I've had for the greater part of the past 2 years is they're going to do everything in their power to remain competitive and see it through, right? So I don't think there's an appetite with this group to blow it up, to do any sort of rebuild. Now, if things go, if you're looking at, a really abysmal record coming into the trade deadline, or maybe even before that, decisions that might accelerate some things or change maybe the calculus and what they're thinking in terms of their future. But I just don't think that they're built to try to blow it up and try to rebuild. I think it's much like, I think the vision will be similar to what you had heard from Monty McNair before, which was to rebuild the roster, be able to compete, to maybe tinker a little bit, but I don't think they're looking at taking steps backwards. Now, that being said, adding somebody like Russell Westbrook kind of proves that a little bit. Trying to add somebody, Russell Westbrook's not trying to go to a team where he's going to a rebuilding situation. Obviously, it's a 1-year minimum deal, so if it doesn't work this year, maybe they revisit that in the summertime. But I think everything is leading up to 2027. If you look at kind of how their books are constructed from a salary cap and contractual situation, a lot of the money that's on this team hits a cliff in 2027. So I think the organization feels that it owes it to this fan base and to some of the pieces that they've added to this team to see it through. And it doesn't take a whole lot to be able to change things rather quickly. But again, that belief in actually being able to do something, it gets harder. I think there's a lot of teams that are going to be looking to get off of bloated contracts, and maybe the Kings can be the beneficiary of that. Certainly, they've got a cupboard full of draft picks and assets that they have at their disposal. I don't think that but the long-winded answer there, Alan, is I just don't think that there's an appetite to rebuild and to do that quite yet. And so while a lot of teams, people recognize that to do that and build through the draft is probably the biggest recipe for success to be able to build off of. Certainly the draft. I mean, just look at your history. The draft, when they have done that, hasn't been kind to Sacramento. I mean, you have to hit on draft picks, and even when they've had a wealth of them and top 5 picks and all that thing, it doesn't mean it always works. So they've tried a lot of things under since Vivek Ranadive has been an owner of this team, and make no mistake. I mean, when the Kings stayed here, the goal was that, I mean, they were doing so because of a fan base that supports them, both from a business standpoint and from a fan standpoint. And personally, as someone who's grown up in the city, I think there are those that would support a rebuild that way. But I also know a lot of people that won't support it. And typically, what I find, and I think I've mentioned this to you before, is that a lot of fans that say that they think that's, hey, go ahead, hit the and start over, go young, do all these things, are typically people that watch TV and watch the Kings. They don't pay to go to games. So it's easier said than done for sure. It probably gives you the best chance for your success and for your future, but there's no guarantees. And so when you've got contractual obligations to the likes of Domantas Sabonis, you're thinking of, having an extension here for Keegan Murray in his future. You've got you brought in pieces to be able to contend and to be able to add, and it hasn't worked yet. But that doesn't mean you throw your hands up after a couple of years and hit the reset button. But I don't feel that they're close to doing that quite yet.
Sean Cunningham, that last answer, we are going to cut that up, Sean, and it is going to get posted because that is great stuff, man. Really, really appreciate it. I'm a bit surprised at what you said there. And Sean, all I got to say, just don't touch the 2026 draft pick. That's it. Sean, I need the good Boozer twin. I need Darren Peterson. I need AJ DeBanza. That's the only thing I have to say, Sean. They want to move on from other assets, cool. But I need my 2026 pick. We've been talking about it for a very long time here on this show.
Wow. Well, I mean, I remember a time, and everyone being excited over Marvin Bagley. It didn't work out too well. People being excited over Josh Jackson. I was one of them. I know he wasn't on the Kings until he was practically out of the league, but a lot of top 5 picks who didn't quite work out. So, I wouldn't say in my mind that 2020 draft pick is completely off the table because, what if that lands you, hypothetically, Giannis Antetokounmpo? Not to say that would happen, but that's certainly something that would change my mind as to the way I look at the 2026 first-round pick.
That certainly would. And, Sean, you're over the phone, but I got quite the grin going on here. Great stuff from Sean Cunningham, who covers the Kings and sports in general in Sacramento for KCRA. Sean, all right, don't worry. I'm going to talk to my real boss, okay, my wife. I'm going to get the green light. You're going to take me out on the town. Okay, and I'm going to get the full Sean Cunningham experience, okay?
Lucky you. Get that babysitter.
I will. Sean Cunningham, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon, man.
You got it, buddy. Thanks.
That was great stuff from Sean Cunningham. When we return, I'm starting to understand why some Kings fans might be upset, not because they want to tank, because they want the Kings to get better. Let's discuss when we return. Now on Sactown Sports.
So my mother is thinking of switching from